Okay, good morning. We are continuing Reish Mem Ches. We're up to Sif Base. Reish Mem Ches talks about sailing on Shabbos, going on a boat on Shabbos. And in the Hakdama to this Siman, the Mishnah Berurah quoted the Brisa from Masechah Shabbos, which says, Ein mafligin besfina pachos megimel yomim. Chazal made a decree that you can't set sail 3 days, within 3 days of Shabbos. It's machlikas if that's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or if it's Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. We spoke about that previously. But either way, you can't set sail within 3 days of Shabbos unless it's a Dvar Mitzvah. Now, why is that? So various reasons were given. We saw one of the reasons is because maybe you might come to do Melacha. If it's in close to Shabbos, you set sail, then Shemi Yitzdarech Yisrael Lasis Melacha on Shabbos, or he may have to ask a non-Jewish person to do Melacha on Shabbos. Another reason given is because of Tchumen, the Issa of Tchumen, to go beyond the sort of the Issa Tchum, the limits of the sort of the city, if you like. Going down on Shabbos is a problem. And then the third reason is that it might disturb your Einik Shabbos. Now, here in Sif Beis, where we're up to, that is really the reason that the Mechaba is going to go with. And that is based on the shit of the Rif. The whole issue over here is that you'll get seasick, and therefore within 3 days, because the Rif is concerned, according to the other reasons, why is it 3 days? What difference is it? If it's there's a problem, you may come to do Melacha, or there's a problem of Tchumen, then why should 3 days have any bearing on that? And therefore the Rif gives the third reason of that of disturbing Einik Shabbos. We explained the other reasons why 3 days, because 3 days is considered connected to Shabbos, as the Mishnah Berurah says in Sif Kotan Ches. But let's press on. Sif Beis. Had ein mafligin besfina pachos mishleish yom kodim Shabbos. That which we says in the Mechaba, that you don't set sail within 3 days of Shabbos. Hatam mishum Einik Shabbos. The reason is because it might disturb your Einik Shabbos. Shekol shleish yom harishonim yesh lehem tza'ar uvibul. Because the first 3 days on a ship voyage, a person is sort of seasick and you're rocking backwards and forwards, and that you feel distressed and you feel nauseous, and therefore that will disturb your Einik Shabbos. It's only if you're sailing in salty water, i.e. you're out in the ocean. But if you're on a river, the water is not as turbulent, and therefore, and also there isn't as much salt, and therefore it's not going to disturb the Einik Shabbos as much. And therefore, going on some sort of river voyage is allowed even on Erev Shabbos. That is only true if you know she'ein ba'om kamasarat tfachim. There isn't the depth of 10 tfachim. But if you know that the bottom of the ship to the ground is less than 10 tfachim, then you've got a problem of tchumen, because you're connected to the ground, and if you're sailing on Shabbos, then you're going to go too far beyond the tchum, and therefore it would be asa. Can just finish it off the Ramah. And so too, a boat where you may come to have to do Melacha on Shabbos, also likonis b'shleish yom kodim Shabbos, says the Ramah, then it will be prohibited to go on this boat within 3 days of Shabbos. Even if you haven't got problems of the tchum, i.e. the boat is more than 10 tfachim from the ground, and therefore there's no problem of tchumen. But there's no problem of the boat in a situation where the boat is being pulled by animals on the river bank. And it's not considered like going on a carriage on Shabbos, which is asa. This would be okay. So, just to summarize Sif Beis, we said in the Hakdama to Siman Reish Mem Ches that the Chazal say Ein mafligin, you're not allowed to set sail within 3 days before Shabbos unless it's a Dvar Mitzvah. Various reasons are given, but the Mechaba follows the view of the Rif in this Sif, that the main reason is Einik Shabbos, that within 3 days of setting sail you get seasick and nauseous, and therefore it takes 3 days at least for you to sort of get used to things, and therefore within 3 days of Shabbos you're not allowed to set sail. The Ramah brings on the other reasons namely the issue of Tchumen and the issue of doing Melacha on Shabbos. Let's do the Mishnah Berurah on that. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Kotzen Yud Beis, Afilu B'Erev Shabbos. So if you're going on rivers and things like that, where it's not a very turbulent voyage, plus there's not there's not so much salt, and the smell is not so debilitating, in that situation you're allowed to go. And says the Mishnah Berurah, you don't even have to arrange and pay the captain of the ship that he has to stop on Shabbos. To actually set sail on Shabbos itself, that's the next sif coming up. Sif Kotzen Yud Gimel. For who shaloi, the given da Tchumen drabanan hu. Since the whole issue over here of Tchumen is a drabanan issue, even if you're talking about going 12 mil, which in normal circumstances would be an Issa Deraisa, on the rivers and seas, there's no concern of Issa Deraisa. Why? She'in doimin lediglei midbar. Because the whole source for an Issa Deraisa of Rishus Harabim is the source is Diglei Midbar, of how we encamped in the Midbar. And therefore here, of course, there's no Diglei Midbar, you're in a sea. There's no comparison. And therefore we're makel, and we say in any event, the Tchumen is only starts if when you're 10 tefachim within the ground of the seabed, and here you're higher than that anyway. So therefore, we're makel generally about the issue of Tchumen in a sea voyage. Shemikarka asfina. So you measure it from the bottom of the ship. Pirush afal pisha mayim amukim asar. Even though the water could be very could be 10 tefachim deep. Im asfina mashakas b'mayim. If the ship is submerged in the water, and you haven't got 10 tefachim from the bottom of the sea until the base of the ship, then you've got a problem of tchumen. Not only if you're sitting in the boat lower than 10 tefachim, then it turns out that you're within 10 tefachim of the ground, and you've got a problem of tchum. But even if you're sitting on the deck, which could be much higher than 10 tefachim certainly from the ground level, because you're much higher up, and then you might argue, well, this is not a problem of tchumen, because the base of the ship may be within 10 tefachim of the ground, but I'm much higher up. Still, it's a problem. Since the deck of the ship is wider than 4 tefachim, and it's therefore it's easy to walk across. Says Mishnah Berurah is considered as if I'm actually walking. I'm on the base of the ship, and therefore I've got a problem of tchumen because I'm within 10 tefachim of the actual ground of the sea. However, there are those who say that if you are sitting on the deck further up, and therefore you're higher than 10 tefachim from the seabed, and your legs are not dangling down, that they would permit that. So therefore there are those who are matter in that situation. So really the question over here is, where do you measure the 10 tefachim? Tchumen is only going to be a problem if it's within 10 tefachim of the ground. If you've got the seabed and you've got a ship and you're sitting on the deck, then l'chora you're going to be more than 10 tefachim from the seabed, and therefore you can be soimech on that zimekel, as the Mishnah Berurah says in tzarich lekach. Okay, tesvav. Also lot says. So this is going on, the end of the mechaba. Also mishum tchumen, that when we're talking about if it's your dua that you're within 10 tefachim, it's known that you're within 10 tefachim of the ground, then you've got a problem of tchumen. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sivkot and Tesvav. Also lot says hainu b'chol hashleisha yom kodim Shabbos. That's within 3 days of Shabbos. You've got a problem of tchumen. You can't go out. Im yodea sheyiz damin lo yisham b'Shabbos makom hahu v'yitzarich lavar elav al isa tchumen. If you know you're going to get to this place where you're going within 10 tefachim of the ground, and therefore there's going to be a problem of tchumen, then it's prohibited. But if it's before 3 days before Shabbos, then there's not a problem, because as we said previously, that the 3 days before Shabbos are connected to Shabbos. Tes Zayin, Lidei Melacha, Afilu Melacha Drabonin. So the third reason given is because you may come to do Melacha. That's the reason the Ramah gives. And even if it's Melacha Drabonin, that is still a concern, and therefore that would prohibit a sea voyage if you may come to do Melacha Drabonin as a result of being on the ship. Yud Zayin, this is going on the Ramah at the end. So he said, if you're in a situation where you're likely to come to do Melacha on Shabbos, also likonis ba shloisha yom kodim Shabbos. You can't go on the boat for within 3 days of Shabbos. Why? It says the Mishnah Berurah Yuzayin Hatam Kamosha Kosavnu Lamala B'Sif Kotan Ches. It's like we said previously in Sif Kotan Ches, and there the Mishnah Berurah says that anything within 3 days of Shabbos is shaykh to Shabbos, and therefore we're concerned about that. Now, and then lastly, the Ramah finishes off and says that the concern is also if animals are pulling the boat on the side, if they're sort of walking on the river banks and they're schlepping the boat, then ein issa, there's no prohibition. V'lo domi lahalicha b'karon. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Rotzaloma, Im lo hay issa acher, if there were no other, all things considered, there are no other isurim, kagoyin b'naharas hanovim ulamalim asar, for example, the water is flowing and there's no problem of tchum because it's more than 10 tvachim, v'gam lo yitzrach Yisrael asas melacha sham, and there's no concern of melacha. Ein lesser lissa b'sfina heicha shebahemes moshchis asfina. There's no problem of actually going on a boat which is being drawn, which is being pulled by animals. Don't think it's like the equivalent of going on a carriage on Shabbos. That the animals are schlepping the carriage. We're not saying the same thing. The problem of going on an animal on Shabbos is you might come to cut off a branch to hit the animal to go faster, to lead the animal, to direct it. Here, in this situation, what the Ramah is describing is you're on the boat and the animals are on the riverbank and they're schlepping the boat. So it's not shaykh that you're going to come and pull off a branch and hit the animal. And therefore, this scenario where the animals are pulling the boat, and you're on the boat, then that is actually okay, even within 3 days of Shabbos. Okay, good. Sif Gimel. In a situation where you're allowed to set sail on Erev Shabbos, for example, it's a Dvar Mitzvah, or there's no other concerns, it's a river, there's no tchumin, there's no melacha problems, etc. If you enter the ship on Erev Shabbos, Koneh Shevisa, and you acquire residence in that ship, your Koneh Shevisa on Erev Shabbos, even if you set sail on Shabbos itself, is mutter. So, this is quite applicable for the cruises we spoke about the other day. You want to go on a cruise and they're setting sail on Shabbos morning, that could be okay. If you are being Koneh Shevisa, you're acquiring your residence on Shabbos by Kabbalah Shabbos time, then it would be okay. So long as you stay on the boat from Friday night, says the Ramah, even if you leave the boat, in other words, you're there Friday night, you can make Kiddush, you're Koneh Shevisa, and then you want to go for a walk on Friday night and leave the boat, which is docked, and then Shabbos morning the boat sets sail, no problem. There are those who make Kiddush on the boat, and then, because they're Koneh Shevisa, they then go home because they're staying in a hotel near the dock, in Southampton or something. They sleep there, and the next morning they go back to the boat. That's okay. Because and they set sail the next day, that's okay because they've been Koneh Shevisa in the boat. And says the Ramah, you don't have to protest against that. Okay, good. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sifkot and Yutes. Heicha de Muta, Pirush. All the Mechaber previously was talking about setting sail on Erev Shabbos. Here, it transpires, according to the Ramah, according to the Mechaber, that you're actually allowed to set sail even on Shabbos in certain situations. Now that actually has very interesting halachic implications, because he says in Yud Gimel there is a concern of daber dover, which means your dibur on Shabbos has got to be different. And one thing that you can't say that Chazal prohibits is not to say that you're going on a journey. You can't say, I'm driving to Manchester tomorrow, because you can't drive, you can't say things, malachas, which you can't do. So it says in footnote number 13, he says something very interesting. For kivin sheyesh ofen shemuter lahaflik b'sfina b'Shabbos. Since there are hechatimsas, there are situations where you're allowed to travel by boat on Shabbos, as we've described. Kosav Orach HaShulchan shemuter ledaber b'Shabbos al hafloga b'sfina. You're allowed to say that I'm going on a voyage on Shabbos, I'm going on a sea journey on Shabbos. Ve'im b'zeh mishum isa v'daber dovo. Or k'fi ha'mavu b'Shulchan Aruch l'kaman in Siman Shin Zayin. Shekiven shemuter loleches mechus l'tchum al yedei burgenin. Since you could theoretically get to Manchester al yedei burgenin. Manchester is from London, is a journey of 3 hours in the car or whatever it is, and it's it's chus l'tchum. And if you were to walk there, it's way beyond the tchum. But you could set up burgenin are these little huts which extend your tchum. Mutter ledaber akach b'Shabbos. So you could say, I'm going to Manchester because alidei burgenin is mutter. Or mitam zeh tzidit hagonim Shlomo Zalman Auerbach shemutter le'odem lomer shebetchinos shebetachniso l'nsoya l'mokum she'efshel lagiel b'sfina. You're allowed to say that I'm going to a certain place which you can get there by boat. For example, let's say you want to set sail from Bournemouth to Brighton, from one resort to another. Well, you could get there. It could be beyond the tchum, but since you can get there by boat, and there are hechatimtzes of how you can go on a boat on Shabbos, even though you're planning on driving there, we say I'm traveling to Bournemouth, or I'm traveling to Manchester, includes a possibility of going by boat. Also, so very interesting. So you could say that you're going to a certain place where you could get there by boat, because that there are hechatimzas where it's mutar on Shabbos. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Koton Chof Shevisa. The way to be Koneh Shevisa is to sit there the whole of Ben Hashmoshes until night. The ilav hachi also likones bo b'Shabbos mipnei shenira kashot al pnei hamayim, because otherwise it looks like you're sailing. There also commercial costs of Siman Shin Lamed we've discussed. Chof beis the ma'achashe Koneh hainu the al yedei zeh have the asfina kabeisei. Once you've been Koneh Shevisa, this ship is like your residence. Ve'ein the nira kashot. It's not if you're sailing on Shabbos, or swimming on Shabbos. All it allows you to do is to enter the ship on Shabbos. But once you've set sail on Shabbos and then you dock on Shabbos afternoon, then that's your new place. You've got Daled Amos, the commercial cost of a Simon Tov Daled. ומגיע הספינה לעיר המוקפת מחיצה, אין שם בהגה. אבל אם לא יוצא מהספינה מאש שקונה שוויסה, מותר כך ללך מקום שיגיע ליבשה עד 2,000 לכל רוח. Then you've got 2,000 amas from in all directions. והנמידי כשהייתה הספינה לעילם למעלה מ10 טווחים, when the ship was always above 10 טווחים, and there's no problem of tchumen, because otherwise, if you're less than 10 טווחים, you will be of Koneh Shvus wherever you happen, in an earlier stage. Of a sfina gufa mahalech es kula, and on the boat itself, you're allowed to walk the whole boat itself. Afilim yotza mebe'erev lebeisa achashe Koneh Shevisa, kim sheshavas ba'avir mechitzas mebayjayim, because before Shabbos came in, you were, the mechitzas of the boat were you were Koneh Shevisa there. Ve'im loy Koneh Shevisa klal mebayjayim, and if you weren't, ayin le'el b'simen tof heisif zayim Mishnah Berurah ki sham bi'arnu kol. Interesting. If you look at 14, very interesting footnote. If it starts raining on the boat, and you therefore need to get off the boat, that you're allowed to go in the whole city. It's considered like one big Daled Amos. You need to go to do something pressing, that would also be allowed. Okay, let's just finish off. Chof Gimel. So this is going on the Ramah. The Ramah says, even if you leave the boat, once you're Koneh Shevisa Friday night and you want to go out of the boat again and then come back on again, that's no problem, says the Ramah. Shevisa Me'erev Shabbos, v'afilim chol yontov Erev Shabbos, Shori Likna Shvisa. Even if you're going, let's say Yom Tov is Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. So you're talking about a Yom Tov Thursday, Friday, and you want to be Koneh Shvisa on the Friday, that's okay. Ve'ein bozeh mishmachonim Yom Tov the Shabbos is not a problem of preparing for Shabbos. Ve'ein moel zeh lekineh Shvisa shekonim Erev Yom Tov. It doesn't contradict what you were Koneh Shvisa for Erev Yom Tov. You're now Koneh a new Shvisa for Shabbos. V'ayin b'simen Tov tes zayin be'ezeh ofen ein by mishum hachana. Okay, just finishing off. Chof Daled is she'osim kiddush b'sfina v'yesh she'osim kiddush b'sfina. We said, says the Mishnah Berurah v'gam l'dei zu bo'inu she'yeshev sham kol ben hashmoshes. It's not a question of just making kiddush and then going, but rather staying there the entire ben hashmoshes lekinyan shvisa. And it's just so even that lechatchila nochen lasis gam kein sham kiddush v'lechol matz. In addition to being there and to being Koneh Shvisa, the whole ben hashmoshes, make kiddush. That is an extra way to be Koneh Shvisa. K'dei lefarsim adova shekoneh sham shvisa v'lo yavoi lechashtam. Because then it's sort of publicizing the fact that you're being Koneh Shvisa there for that Shabbos, not only by staying on the boat during the whole of Ben Hashmoshes, but also by making kiddush. That would be mafar same the dova. Okay, we'll leave it there.